The Gators get back on the field for everyone to see, not on Saturday. It's a Thursday spring game for the Gators and Billy Napier in Gainesville. We got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown to help us set up the spring festivities. David, how's it going?
Pretty good, Mark. Busy week with the spring game. Being on Thursday kind of just throws the schedule all over the place a little bit. So we're trying to wind down spring coverage a bit. This is the only time we get to hear from Billy Napier's staff. This is the only time he lets them talk. He doesn't let them talk during the season. So we've been able to hear from every assistant coach so far and some of the players to go along with it. So been pretty busy covering the Gators this spring, and it all culminates on Thursday night.
Which, David, brings me to why Thursday night? Has there been a reason given to that just being a better time?
Absolutely, Mark. Billy Napier doesn't want to split time with recruits. So all these different spring games going on Saturdays, he was like, well, it may be Thursday, it may be weird. We may not get everybody, but at least, a lot of our top targets, instead of going to Alabama or instead of going to Tallahassee, instead of going to Athens, instead of going to Knoxville, there's only one place to go on Thursday. And so he gets to, he's admitted it's honestly, it's just for recruiting only to have it on a Thursday night. So that's the focus for Billy Napier. It paid off last year. A lot of their commits that ended up in the class of 2023 were at that spring game last year's Thursday night spring game. So Billy Napier is going to keep that tradition going, it looks like, for him, and see if it pays dividends again for a class that's off to a really, really good start.
And we'll have the rest of us reworking our schedules because I got to keep that in mind. Thursday night, Florida football. I can watch it. SEC Network Plus, I believe, right?
Yeah. That's the only bad thing about it being on a Thursday. You don't get pure SEC Network coverage because of baseball coverage. They got those contracts, and part of, I think, the SEC agreement was Thursday nights are going to be SEC baseball. So since it's spring football around baseball season, they got that predetermined agreement there. So, you're streaming it anyway, but it is what it is.
David, I think that's the deal with pretty much across the board in the SEC, unless they're throwing like a Georgia on ESPN2. Auburn was on SEC Network Plus on a Saturday last Saturday. So I think they prioritize baseball and probably just figure, hey, football fans are football fans. And if they love the SEC, they're going to jump on board. So speaking of which, we'll get through the spring game before we hit some recruiting. Of course, everyone's going to be lasered in on these quarterbacks. And what are we hearing thus far? Anything good, negative? We did hear early returns on Graham Mertz, showing some leadership, picking up the offense, showing to be ready to go.
Yeah, Mark, I think going through as we hit the spring game, it seems to still be a tightly contested battle between Graham Mertz, Jack Miller, Max Brown, probably in that third spot as the young quarterback. He probably will have the bigger plays, just not as consistent as the other two. Kind of seems to be the word right now. So we'll see if Max Brown can get the consistency part down. But right now, the battle does look like it's between Graham Mertz, Jack Miller. I'd say Graham Mertz maybe with a slight lead, Mark, but it really may be eyes of the beholder. I mean, I can talk to people. Look, we only get 10, 15 minutes of practice, and that's warm-ups by that time. You don't really get any 11 on 11 or anything with the media in attendance. But asking around from people who've been to the scrimmages and been at practice, might be eyes of the beholder, Mark. You talk to somebody and say, oh, Graham Mertz looks better. You talk to somebody else and it's Jack Miller looks better. And Mertz seems to be the more consistent that I've heard, maybe looking better. But that lets me know that, he's not really separating right now from Jack Miller. So we'll see how long the battle goes on. I'm not so sure Thursday night will go into some ultimate determination for Billy Napier and naming a starter. I asked him last week, is there a timeline to name a starter? He says, not really. We'll cross that bridge when it gets there. So I honestly believe him if he thinks he has the guy who will be the starter. I do think he'll name it. But there's some advantages not. I mean, you play Utah game one. Do you want to keep that under wraps as long as possible as having a starter? But still, Mark, even with that, asking behind the scenes, people who've seen it, that battle will probably still go on into fall camp. So I think the other advantage of naming a starter is once you get into fall camp, you want that guy taking all the starter reps. You want not splitting time between two guys. So I do think ideally Billy Napier would probably want to name a starter maybe right after spring, early in fall camp. So the splits are so the rep splits are going to the number one guy.
David Waters, Gators Breakdown, right here on YouTube, the very best in Florida football coverage. You can catch it on your favorite audio platform, not just the best in Florida football coverage, but one of the very finest and most popular college football podcasts out there. So catch David and the rest of the crew there at Gators Breakdown. And we're gonna guard against Overreaction Friday because everybody's gonna overreact to the spring game. And I know people get excited. The cameras are on and they get to see the team play to a certain extent. But let's understand, we got 15 practice sessions and typically about these teams go to about 3 scrimmages. And actually the ones that we don't see might be a little bit more important because they're going to do some things that they don't want other people to see. They're not going to do that for the cameras. So let's hold it off on the overreactions. But when we put all 15 practices together, David, and again, you've seen a limited time, but have a number of sources, who do you think's standing out, or is anyone flashed, anyone breaking out this spring?
Yeah, Mark. Well, I guess we'll get some standouts, breakouts, and for right now on offense, I think the running game is a given. Montreal Johnson, Trevor Etienne, even Cam Carroll, throw him in there too. The transfer from Tulane. The running game is about where it should be. We're hearing some big runs still happening for this Gator offense with this running game. Offensive line's been beat up a little bit. So Mark, talking about overreaction, I don't even think Florida's starting, quote unquote, starting offensive line will probably even be playing together Thursday night. So it'll probably be something to look out for there. But the run game there. But as far as breakout standouts, I'd say tight end Arlis Boardingham. He was somebody I identified coming into spring as I heard really good early returns as a true freshman last year. He battled some injuries last year. Coming into this spring, been told a couple of times he's been pretty much unguardable at times. So maybe Florida gets the tight end more into the mix. When the season rolls around, Keon Zipperer will be out for the season. That was another tight end for Florida. He's been around the program for a few years now. They were looking to count on him, but he's going to be out with an injury. So Arlis Boardingham actually needs to step up as well at the tight end position for the Gators. And then Mark, on the other side of the ball, I'm going to go up front. Florida brought in some transfers. Noah Banks from Louisville, Cam Jackson from Memphis. Heard those guys have been disruptive, causing havoc all spring long. I do, like you said, probably need to guard against Thursday. We've heard this reputation for Austin Armstrong as a defensive coordinator of being really, really aggressive. Well, in the spring game, how aggressive is Billy Napier going to let him be? I guess is the question. As you said, in the scrimmages, we'll probably get a whole lot more that we don't see. I'm not so sure they want to put out there a lot of what they've been working on tape as live on cameras, as you said, on a Thursday night. So, but we've heard the disruption up front. We've heard the aggressiveness that Austin Armstrong likes to bring. So I'll be looking at those guys to see how they maybe handle one-on-one battles Thursday night. But as far as blitzing and stunts and disguise coverages, I don't know how much we'll get at that Thursday night. The defense as a whole is something that we'll definitely be looking out for this Gators team, as the defense has just not been anywhere near what it should be the last 3 seasons. So disruption up front, and extend that for the defense. Tackling's been an issue for this defense. So, probably the basics on defense a bit. What can you do on one-on-one matchups? Can you make your tackles is probably what we'll be looking for. But players, Arlis Boardingham on offense and those 2 transfers on defense.